Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'll be sharing my favorite role playing game titles of 2021. We'll get started right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'm going to share my favorite role playing game titles of 2021. But before I do, a few things I do want to mention before we get stuck in. First off, not all of these came out in 2021. I had my first exposure to them in 2021. Once again, this is a favorites list. It is not a best of list. And there's quite a few different reasons for that. Number one, I didn't get to see every role playing game release that came out this year. So that's a big one. Also, keep in mind, we've got a lot of reviews over at thegaminggang.com that tackle role playing games. Those were PDFs that were provided for review or that my reviewers picked up. I didn't do the reviews. So if it's something that Sammy or Kevin or Ronald took care of, it's not probably included in this list except for one. There is one that Sammy did a review of that I am sharing as well. So that's another reason why this isn't a best of. These are going to be presented in absolutely no particular order. This is also going to be kind of stream of consciousness. This is not scripted. Just going to talk about, some aspects of what I really liked about each of these releases. So first off, let's get started by taking a peek at Dune, Adventures in the Imperium from Modiphius Entertainment. Modiphius had two big role-playing games release. Well, I guess we could say three because we've got the new edition of Cthulhu. But earlier in the year, a lot of people were really pumped for Dune as well as Fallout. And I thought it'd be possible that both of these would utilize the same mechanics. And interestingly enough, they do not. So let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to kind of show you a little bit of the book. We're not going to take too deep a dive into it. So one aspect I really dug about Dune, Adventures in the Imperium, is it is relatively rules light. This is more aimed at storytelling as opposed to being super, super crunchy mechanics, which Fallout is much crunchier than Dune. You get to create your own house if you'd like, so you don't have to be playing from, as an example, like House Atreides or House Harkonnen. We've got various different archetypes for you as well. We have additional houses that were dealt with in the novels, not just the original book Dune, but in the sequels, as well as the books that have been written by Herbert's son. So we've got that. We've got a starting adventure in here as well. I also dig that it's not just the original book that's being tackled here. It looks like this is an entire series. This is a property it looks like Modiphius Entertainment is really going to support down the line. Once they were able to roll out Fallout and Achtung Cthulhu, I think we're seeing more focus on Dune now. We've got a new adventure that just released in PDF as well. So this really involves a lot of the political maneuvering and backstabbing as well, which is a big part of the whole planet of Arrakis and the whole Imperium as well. So I get the feeling that we may actually see some breakout from Arrakis later on down the line where we'll see some aspects of the Imperium where you'll be able to set adventures on various different planets with far more detail than we get in this core book. But all in all, really nicely done. The art style is very, very cool, and it is not based upon the film. So you're not looking at, oh, well, all these images are inspired by the film Dune. This is all separate. So I like that as well. It's not like a movie tie-in. They didn't try to go the way of a movie tie-in. Next up, we're going to take a look at something that did not come out in 2021, but I got a chance to see it and review it, and that is Call of Cthulhu, The Wicked City. This is phenomenal. This has won multiple awards. It's an Annie Award winner, and I can definitely see why. Swing on over to the other camera, and I'll show this off a little bit. The fine folks over at Chaosium Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this limited edition. This is kind of the leatherette edition of Berlin. And we get a little pull-out map. And this is set in the 1920s and 30s. This is the rise of fascism is starting to take place in Germany. Berlin is kind of a wide open city as well. It's pretty crazy. Anything goes as far as Berlin during the Weimar Republic. So I do want to mention that this is aimed at mature readers. There are aspects of drug abuse, sexuality, aspects like that. I got to also point out that I think the fine folks over at Chaosium really did a lot of great research into bringing this setting to life. It's really top notch. We get a few different adventures as well within, and the adventures are good. They're not just throwaway adventures like you'll sometimes see in setting books. And they are actually long adventures as well. These are not adventures that you're going to wrap up in just a session. And you could conceivably tie these together as a campaign that actually runs years. So then we get some new additions. We get some NPCs. There's a lot of information about historical individuals as well that you can utilize as NPCs. All in all, this is the sort of source book that we wish every role-playing game had an equivalent of. It is that good. It is awesome. And obviously enough, I can see why it won numerous awards. So let's jump back to something that did release earlier this year. In fact, it was rather late in the year when it made its first appearance, and that is the 4th edition of Twilight 2000 from my friends over at Free League Publishing. Should point out, all of the items we're taking a peek at were provided by the publishers for review. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang received any other compensation for me to provide coverage of these various RPGs and RPG supplements. And these days, it's important for you to know that. So a lot of people were pumped. They were very excited. They were very curious. I was certainly very curious about what Free League Publishing was going to do mechanically for Twilight 2000, because the original from Game Designers Workshop. Why did I start saying Game Design Workshop? Because that's certainly not the name of the company. Anyway, those mechanics were pretty crunchy, and actually the game wasn't really well developed. The setting is pretty cool. I mean, essentially what we're looking at is it's the Cold War got hot. It got really hot. Got nuclear hot. And essentially this is a post-apocalyptic setting. but it's not a Mad Max kind of setting. It is basically governments have fallen apart and we're on our way back into a dark ages. And the players represent members of the military. So everything inside this box is really, really well done, really well presented. We've got some different decks of cards. And I'll point out, like, these cards have a linen finish to them, and they're like just encounter cards. You would have thought, like, most companies, they would have just been like, yeah, whatever, just get a deck of cards. That's all we need, decks of cards. But here we've actually got these decks of cards are really well constructed, and they've gone the extra step of actually having a linen finish on it. Everything you need to play is in this box. We've got a player's manual. We got a referee's manual. We got character sheets. If I can get them out here. So, got character sheets here. We've got situation breakdowns. So we've got sit reps, because we actually have two settings. So we have the traditional Poland setting, and we also have Sweden as a setting. So that's something that's very new. And of course, Free League Publishing is out of Sweden. So we've got a bunch of maps. Here we got some counters and some tokens. We've got different encounter maps as well. Like I said, this is just jam-packed to the gills with gaming goodness. Mechanically, this is the crunchiest Year Zero engine game that I've run across. And I could easily see why that would be the case. But Year Zero is still pretty light. Now, there are some deeper dives into some systems here that we've not seen before in games like Mutant Year Zero or Forbidden Lands. And I think that's fine. I don't see a big issue with that with players. This is kind of sandboxy. In fact, I don't want to say kind of. It is sandboxish, that you're not going to have big plotted out adventures to a certain extent. Now, there are some longer encounters in the referee. We're looking at the referee book here that I definitely like. The just kind of like random encounters, like on the road or in camp, things like that, are pretty cool. But these longer scenarios are what I really liked about the referee book also. So you're looking at a lot of content here. Quick peek, show you the player's manual. It's real fast. I got to be honest, I love this artwork. I think this artwork is fantastic. We do get to see this artwork for each of the chapter intros. The line art, some of it I thought was pretty good. Others, I was like, eh. But I can understand why they went with this art style, because this is not the sort of art style we usually see from Free League Publishing. So we've got the different archetypes, talking about developing your character. This is a pretty grim and realistic setting. Combat is extremely lethal, just like it is in the real world. So, like I said, we've got just loads and loads of info in here. We've got tons of gear, vehicles, weapons. And then we've got travel. So essentially what's going on is the player characters can kind of do whatever they want. They can, if they want, they can be military. They can be sort of like CIA if they want to. They can be civilians. They could even be opponents if you want. I know some folks have asked if it's possible you could play as Soviet soldiers. And yeah, with some tweaks, you certainly could. All in all, Twilight 2000, a lot of people were really looking forward to this. And I got to say, Free League did not disappoint. Moving right along. So, one of my favorite role-playing game systems is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And one of the reasons why I really dig it is because it's got a bit of a sense of humor to it. And I think that's sort of the British role-playing vibe. I think that's kind of been the way that the British role-playing kind of scene has been since the beginning when D&D landed on those shores. And I definitely like a bit of the it's not silly and it's not tongue in cheek, but it sort of revels in the muck of the setting. And Cubicle 7 Entertainment has done a wonderful job with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, and they have been releasing director's cut books for the famous Enemy Within campaign. And one of my favorite releases of this year is the 3rd chapter, Power Behind the Throne, which is very, very well done. And the series is over. The PDFs have come out for chapter 4 and 5 of The Enemy Within. The hardcovers have not. And that's why I've stayed away from doing reviews of chapters 4 and 5, waiting for the hardcovers to come out so I can provide a review like I did chapter 3. Swinging on over to the other camera. This is where the player characters, I'm not going to rehash everything that's going on in this campaign, but this is the chapter where things really begin to come to a head for the player characters. The first 2 chapters, there's like world-changing events taking place in the first 2 chapters, but the players are kind of along for the ride. I'm not saying that it's like a railroad or anything like that. It's just they're not real movers and shakers in what transpires. They're not the impetus. They're not what's causing these events to take place. In this chapter, they start to really get stuck in to what's going on, the dire emergency that is going to face the Empire. And some of the things I really like about these director's cut books is, for one, the entire adventure has been revised. So this is not just, oh, well, we put some pretty artwork in here, but this is still the same Enemy Within that was released umpteen, decades ago. So there are also little aspects of this that if your players may have already played The Enemy Within, there are tips on how to change things up. So if you've got any smarty pants players, they're not going to be smarty pants for long. And of course, once again, the adventure has some humor to it. One aspect of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay that I kind of get a kick out of is that very rarely are the nobles noble. So, gotta get a kick out of that as well. All right, that is Power Behind the Throne. Most definitely check out Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay if you have not. It is not a super crunchy role-playing game system, and the adventures and supplements for it are really, really well done. Cubicle 7 Entertainment has really gone all out with their whiff-rip releases from the beginning. They really have. Okay, let's talk a little Pathfinder. And there were a lot of Pathfinder releases that came out that Sammy reviewed, really, really enjoyed. And of course, those were in PDF. Now, something that I actually shot a review of is Pathfinder Lost Omens, the Mwangi Expanse, which is a new setting. It's a new region well, I shouldn't say new. It's a region that's actually expanded upon in this book. And this corresponds with the Strength of Thousands adventure path, which Sammy's been reviewing, which she has really enjoyed and really does highly recommend. So, like I said, this is like a setting book. This is a region book. So we're going to get a breakdown of the various different peoples of the Mwangi Expanse, which is very cool. I mean, it's a very eclectic and diverse group of folks who make up this area. It's, of course, has a bit of an African vibe to it. So we get the different, well, not necessarily races, but they are various different cultures, I guess we will say. So we've got all of that. As you can see, that takes up a big portion of this book. In fact, it's the people of Mwangi is really the largest. And this always reminds me of the Anansi Boys, the Neil Gaiman book. Whenever I see that image, it's the first thing that pops into my head. So we do have a section that's a discussion of the various different religions in the region as well, the different deities that are worshipped. We're going to get into a little bit of info about the geography of different areas of the region. And then we'll move into a bestiary. So we're going to have new monsters and creatures. Not a ton, but we do have some new creatures available. This is just packed with really cool gaming content. This is a setting that most game masters, most players would really look forward to playing in because it's not the same old, same old. It's not the same. Oh, look, it's medieval Europe with a fantasy vibe, which, if that's your bag of tricks, that's cool. I've got no issue with that. But this is putting a nice new wrinkle into the world of Galarian. And we really dug it. Both Sammy and I provided reviews of the Mwangi Expanse. So I had the opportunity at Gen Con to chat for the first time ever with Wolfgang Bauer and of Kobold Press fame, and of course, Dragon and Dungeon Magazine fame back in the day. And had a really fun interview, and he was super, super cool. Really nice guy. I hope to bring him in for more interviews through Skype in the coming year. And he loaded me down with tons of cool Kobold Press stuff. And what really, really knocked my socks off is the Midgard Worldbook. Once again, this is not a 2021 release. This was the first time I had a chance to take a peek at this. It is another setting book, but this is the setting book where all of the, maybe I shouldn't say all, but the vast majority of the Kobold Press adventures, which are statted for like 5e, although I think they still do some Pathfinder stuff. This is their setting. And as I was talking about the Mwangi Expanse not being your same cookie cutter sort of medieval Europe vibe, the same can be said for the Midgard Worldbook. And we'll jump in here. This is a huge tome. And I got to point out, it is some really entertaining reading. I really enjoyed reading this book. Because, I got to be honest, sometimes when I'm doing a review of a setting book, it can be kind of a slog. This was not the case. This has all these different regions. Zobek is like a free city, and it almost reminds me a little bit along the lines of like Lankmar from Fritz Leiber's Fafhrd and Grey Mouser stories. But that's kind of the big city that a lot of things in the Kobold Press universe are set in. But we've got kind of a dark vibe to this setting as well. This is not grim dark. Don't get me wrong. And this is not like, oh, the world's gonna end because the demon lord's here, which is fine. If you dig that stuff, hey, good for you. I mean, it's cool. But we got tons of grim dark. But this is kind of a dark fantasy setting. And I dig that. There's like this vampire kingdom. There's the Empire of the Ghouls, which also has an adventure, which my review of that is on the horizon. But if you are looking for a setting book that's still high fantasy, still your kind of your traditional high fantasy, but it's got quite a bit different vibe to it than, say, your Greyhawks or your Forgotten Realms, then I definitely highly, highly recommend you check out the Midgard Worldbook because it's a wonder to behold. I gave this a 10 out of 10. That's how much I liked it. I really, really dug it. Really liked it quite a lot. There is a new source book, or newer, I think the newest source book, tackles the Southlands of this Midgard as well. Goes into a lot more detail about it. I have not had an opportunity to see that, but I understand that it is more kind of inspired by Egypt and Egyptian myth. So there we go. And we got a poster map as well. Top-notch stuff. Good stuff, Maynard, as we used to say when we were kids. Midgard Worldbook from Kobold Press. Moving right along. Sticking with kind of an old schoolish vibe, because that's one of the things that I've noticed about Kobold Press is they sort of have a little bit of an OSR vibe to the proceedings, even though it's all modern. It's all modern mechanics and things like that. But when we talk about OSR, there are some heavy hitters. And one of them is Swords and Wizardry from Frog God Games. So this is the box set. And I got to be honest, I'm not sure if this came out in 2021 or not. It may have come out in 2020. But talking about kind of like the big heavy hitters of the old school Renaissance movement, Swords and Wizardry is one. Another is Old School Essentials, which I have coverage coming up in the new year of. And OSE released a box set. That's how it first started out, was as a box set. And Frog God Games decided they were going to do a box set as well. And everything that's in the Swords and Wizardry complete. But whoa, what was that? Hit the wrong, went in wrong direction there, kids. There we go. That's better. It's like, hey, the show's starting again. Hey, what can I tell you? What can I tell you? All right, so we got the box set. So we're going to have the various different booklets. So we had a little welcome from Matt Finch. This also came with dice. I took the dice out of the box. Get a Swords and Wizardry bookmark. So we got a monster book. We got spells and magic. We got the referee's book. We got the player book. And then we have a pad of character sheets, which I thought that was kind of cool. Small character sheets, although they're not on two sides. I would have liked to have seen dual sides on that. So very nicely done there. So we get some new artwork within these as well. It's artwork I hadn't seen before. Some of it, not all of it, but some of the artwork is new. And essentially, if you are not familiar with Swords and Wizardry, it takes kind of like original D&D and runs with it. And it is not a complete clone. So it's not a clone of OD&D at all. It is its own thing. But I gotta say, if you are bouncing around the idea of checking out the OSR, you can simply do no wrong with Swords and Wizardry, be it if you want to grab the box set or the Swords and Wizardry complete hardcover book, which this is Swords and Wizardry complete. That's why it says it's the complete box set. What they mean is it is the complete edition is a box set, not that it's just a complete box set. So we get some of the spells. One aspect of the OSR I always like, and I am a forever game master. It's just how it works. I've been running Call of Cthulhu for decades. But what I like about the OSR is your spells are usually pretty concise, and you're not looking at having to read 2 pages of content for a spell. It's usually a paragraph or 2 summing everything up. And as a game master at the table, that is very, very helpful. Now we'll take a peek at the monsters here as well. A lot of this artwork I found that was already in the complete book, but like I said, there's some that struck me as being brand new. I don't remember this image from the complete rule book itself. So this comes with the 4 booklets, comes with dice, and it comes with the character sheets. I gotta be honest, I am not sure if this is still available or not. These box sets from these RPG publishers, especially those that are kind of the OSR, they tend to go fast. So I'm not sure if this is still available or not. So when we talk about the OSR, got to talk about the game that started it, right? Of course, it's not OSR now. It is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. And I absolutely love The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. To me, I think this adventure is my favorite that's been released for 5th edition D&D. It is that much fun. I am a huge fan of bringing a fairy tale vibe, a mythological vibe. I like aspects of the Fae being included in games as well. This covers all the bases for sure. So let's swing on over to the other camera. I'll give you a peek inside. If you followed the Gaming Gang, you know that I do not give free rides to D&D releases. I don't give free rides to anything. And I got to say, I think off the top of my head, the only other 10 out of 10 that I've given to a D&D release may have been the Essentials kit, because I thought the adventure was really well done and it was really packed with gaming content. A lot of people out there are not as super keen on this adventure as I am, because I had to be honest, when I'm running any kind of role-playing game, my games don't bog down into just combat after combat after combat after combat. I mean, there are people out there, and once again, it's your game, your table, enjoy it however you want. I'm not telling you you're having wrong fun, but there are people out there who just, they just love wave after wave of monsters and rolling dice and fighting monsters. To me, that's a yawn. This entire adventure can be completed with almost no combat taking place. And there were some folks out there who were like, what? No way. But it's true. And this is just, I think this is just a load of fun. This is just gonna, it reminds me of like the magic of being at the table for the first time, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and finally kind of understanding it and being like, wow, this is a game you can do anything. I mean, there's no rules to it. I mean, there's rules, but it's like, hey, we can be whatever kind of characters we want. We can embark on whatever kind of adventures we want. Everything was magical and new and unique. And I think The Wild Beyond the Witchlight helps bring back some of that magic to D&D. Sorry to say, the follow-up, the latest adventure supplement, Strixhaven, I don't recommend you pick up, but The Wild Beyond the Witchlight is certainly an adventure that should be in your 5th edition collection. So we're going to go back to one of my favorite companies. And I go way back with this company as well. I picked up Call of Cthulhu when it first came out. So I have been involved with Call of Cthulhu for 40 years now. But it was not the first Chaosium role-playing game I ever bought. The first Chaosium role-playing game I ever bought was RuneQuest. So we have a new RuneQuest starter set. And this is what all role-playing game starter sets should struggle to attain, because this is fantastic. And it is a huge bargain, and it is a wonderful introduction to the world of Glorantha. Got to point out, my review is not up for this yet. So that is actually coming in the next few days. But I did want to include it in my favorite role-playing games of 2021 because it's one of my favorite role-playing game titles of 2021. Swing on over to the other camera. I'll crack this box on open so you can see what's inside. So we get dice. So we get a set of dice. We got 20-siders. We got our percentile dice. We're going to have 4 books. We got 4 books in here. We've got pre-generated characters. So we've got quite a few pre-generated characters. And when I say we got quite a few, these are all pre-generated characters. All these little folders, those are pre-gens. We get a couple of maps. We get blank character sheets as well. But the meat and potatoes of RuneQuest, the starter set, are the books. And I'll talk about this more in the review, but if you are someone who's played Call of Cthulhu, or say anything that's been based on basic role-playing from Chaosium Inc., you'll be really familiar with the core concepts of RuneQuest, but there are differences. There are differences within. This is the sort of game, I say it all the time, I don't think there's a game setting, a game world that has experienced as much development than Glorantha. The late Greg Stafford spent over 40, maybe nearly 50 years developing this world. And it shows. It really does show in the presentation. This is kind of a Bronze Age setting. Magic is very unique. We've got runic magic, thus the title RuneQuest. So here we see some different runes. One thing you won't find in the starter set are rules that really create new characters, which is fine. You normally don't see that in starter sets. You usually get your pre-gens and you're off and running. So here's the world of Glorantha. One of the things that I noticed that I believe has kept some gamers away from jumping into RuneQuest is, as I just talked about, Greg Stafford, all that lore, it scares people off. Well, this second book provides a really nice background to give a game master and players a feel for this game world without completely overwhelming them and making them feel like they're tied into certain events that need to take place anything like that. RuneQuest has never been that sort of game. So we've got the World of Glorantha. We've got a solo adventure. And this is solo adventure is pretty long and well done. So we've got a solo adventure. And then for the game master, we've got an adventure book that provides us with 3 full adventures for RuneQuest. I know you're getting some spoilers. You'll get some spoilers too when I do the review. Well, I should say when I post the review. So altogether, you get the 4 adventure books. You get a bunch of cool pre-generated characters. You get your dice, and it is a steal. Let me make sure I can get the dice back in here, because this is one of those famed 1-inch boxes from Chaosium that all their stuff used to come in, because the original RuneQuest I picked up came in a box like this. So did Call of Cthulhu. I gotta say, as much as I hate to kind of say this, because Call of Cthulhu is my game, I think the RuneQuest Starter Set is better than the Call of Cthulhu Starter Set, and I love the Call of Cthulhu Starter Set. So I gotta say, this is a perfect introduction to RuneQuest for anybody who wants to check that out. All right, so I've got one item left in my favorite role-playing game titles. See, I had these all like off camera, so I gotta reach in and grab them. And it is Rackham Vale from Crowbar Creative. This is an OSR title. It is actually statted for Old School Essentials, and it is a location, a locale, a region that is inspired by the artwork of Arthur Rackham. And I have to point out, there is also an extra like add-on that you can get, or I think there's a bundle for both of these from Crowbar Creative. And these are like art cards, but on the back of the art cards is all the info from the book in this entry. And definitely check out my review of Rackham Vale, because I'll go into a bit more detail about the setting and everything. We'll swing on over to the other camera. See, I keep bouncing around to the wrong keys. It's because I'm not used to shooting a video where I keep going back and forth between the cameras. Usually it's from one camera to the other one, back to the first camera, end of show, end of video. So this is a, they call it a zine because it was kickstarted as part of Zine Quest, but this ended up being a book. And it is available in PDF as well. I believe the PDF is actually full color. The book is in grayscale. I don't want to say black and white because we do have some grayscale. But this is a region that just will be a lot of fun for game masters and players. There's a lot of things that tie each of these entries together. There's adventure hooks that make sense. There are different creatures throughout the setting that tie together as well, that I thought was very, very cool. This has a believable ecology taking place within the game world, and I thought that was very, very cool. I'm going to give you maybe a little better look at some of these cards here, just to kind of share that with you here. Once again, I did a review for Rackham Vale. See how we've got color? That's, I believe, how the PDF is presented as well. So something to keep in mind if you're picking up Rackham Vale is you might want to pick up the art cards as well, and not even necessarily to use them at the game table, but to present them as art cards. But once again, that is Rackham Vale. I just reviewed this about a month ago, maybe a little less than a month ago. Really, really like it, and it's you can use it with other role playing game systems. It does not have to be old school essentials, but it is statted for old school essentials. So there you have my 10 favorite role playing game titles that I got to experience for the first time in 2021. Keep in mind, I also have the favorite board games of 2021 video coming very shortly as well. So if you want to see the board games that I like the most that I got to play in 2021, definitely check that out. Of course, if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this, I'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining me. Enjoy the new year. We are just hours away from celebrating New Year's Day. And of course, stay tuned. I've got plenty of gaming coverage coming up in 2022. And of course, here's hoping each and every one of you out there gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. See you next year. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel by clicking right here. Check out the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, or find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for watching.